Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Office Hours at iZooto. Today we have with us two great champions of the Indian media ecosystem. Hi Sonakshi.
Hi Vivek. Thank you for having us.
Hi Sudipta.
Hi Vivek.
Hi. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Right. Uh, Sonakshi and Sudipto are actually part of the same team at Network 18 slash News 18. Sonakshi currently leads all efforts of monetization, and Sudipto leads product at News 18. Both of them are uh, have been there in the Indian media ecosystem for a considerable time now. In fact, Sudipto's tenure is can actually be threatening to some of the folks on the call right now. But so before we sort of dive into the conversation, right? If you can give us a quick introduction about yourself. I know I did sort of say something, but it would be good to hear from you guys. What do you guys do today? Yeah. So actually, why don't we start with you first?
Okay. So I have had a sort of a mixed journey. I started out on the other side of the business. I was an editor, a journalist for about 5-6 years, working with publications like Hindustan Times and a couple of foreign newspapers. I then moved to product. So product is something that I've learned from scratch on the job. That's been for the past 5-6 years. Main exposure has been largely vernacular due to being part of Network 18 during the start of my journey. With business and niche products like Fortune also sprinkled. Conservative websites, unfortunately or fortunately, have not been part of my projects so far. But slapstick websites like Telegraph have been. And now it's majorly limited to the whole spread of News 18. That's 13 languages, trying to find ways to monetize, trying to keep the ad engines running. So that's in a very big, short nutshell, what I currently do.
Sorry,
Vivek?
I was on mute. Sorry. Yeah, I was saying a lot of experience in and around media should be very meaty for today's conversation. So, Dutto, how about you? How has been your stint like over the years?
So I started my career in the e-com space, very early stage Indian e-commerce back in 2004, and spent about 5 years in an e-com domain. Moved on to e-learning for a brief span of time, and thereafter I've been with a large part of my career has been on online classifieds, some bit of publishing with Times of India, Times Internet, and then moving back to in the current role with Network 18 as the head of product for Indic languages for 2 years. Effective this year, I think the role has kind of diversified into English and the entire News 18 cluster.
Got it. Interesting. Okay, so I remember Sonakshi sort of spoke with me briefly about this, that the Network 18 group now touches over 150 million plus users across the country, right, across all its formats put together, right, which is web and video and TV and stuff, right. Now that's an incredible reach to sort of imagine, right. And you guys have sort of very specifically championed the lost cause of tier 2 and tier 3 cities across the country, right? One, I'm just really curious, how is the consumption pattern? Is it different in tier 2, tier 3, or in the villages, as compared to what we see in tier 1, or what you and I do today, right? The way we consume content, how is it different from people, in rural India? Sito, what's your take on this?
So quite an interesting question. In fact, last couple of years, this is the problem we have been trying to solve and address. So I'll just give you some context of when we started the Indic languages and diversified into the 13 languages that we're talking of in the News 18 diaspora. So for us to really consider which languages to go on, I think one of the immediate things, and was a relatively easy thing, was that we already, from our television network perspective, we were already present in most of the states. So News Network 18 or largely the News 18 television network is the by far the widest television network in the country. And we got close to about 15 to 16 channels, which are, you know, covering the entire length and breadth of India. So we already had a television presence. So for us, it was more like going into those markets and leveraging our television business, augmenting it with a digital platform. So one of the very initial thoughts was basically to, um, leverage the news network that is already present. But additionally, what we were also figuring out was to how to make the digital as a standalone platform. And quite interestingly, if I may say, so Telugu as a language, we don't have a television network as yet there. And it's the only language in the News 18 system which is running on its own digitally. So yeah, so in coming back to it, so what we saw in terms of the audience uptake and their interests and all, what I can say, and as I reflect back in the last couple of years, every language has its own sensitivities. Yes, there are certain overarching rules in terms of breaking formats, national interest news, and all, which kind of is generic in nature. But what works well in a South market may or may not work in a Gujarati. So there's no one formula kind of fits all kind of an approach. So down south, it is a very entertainment heavy market. A lot of you know a lot of movie content, celebrity content around that is kind of usually driven. When you go into Gujarati, that's like a more serious market. Entertainment is something we don't see a lot of traction on. But if you talk about business, if you talk about politics, we see that being there. Sports works very well in Bangla. It works very well in Malayalam, but it has not seen a very good uptake in some of the other languages. Punjabi, for example, Punjabi has seen a lot of interest in videos. And so, yeah, every market has its own set of understanding. And when we talk about these markets, we have to look at it from a very micro lens as such.
Interesting. So, actually, how does that compare to what you experienced in your stint at Telegraph, right? The tier one cities, the tier one audience, the SECE audience. Yeah. How did that sort of differ?
So Telegraph, when I was there, was a starting of the digital journey. The newspaper was super popular, but they did not really invest in digital. So we started with getting a whole new look and a better website online. So we saw users growing from like literally 1,000 to millions. Yes, the kind of audience that I get there is limited. Like on a product like Telegraph, you cannot imagine, you cannot have 100 million scale. It's not possible because the writing is different. It's long form. It's very colored, as we say. They have like very slapstick headlines. Not everybody likes it. At Telegraph, basically, our metric for success on social used to be कि कितना troll हुए. अगर आप troll हो रहे हो, तो आपका content on point है. It's not seen as a derogatory thing. So we were waiting for the trolls to kind of come get us. That means you're online. So there the scale was if you do about 10 million users or so sustained monthly, you're doing very well for that content. Similarly, if you put a product like Fortune by the side, which is similar to Telegraph, but all the more smaller audience, there if you doing a 5 million or 6 million recurring audience, that's like gold. Advertisers for that little pie, just because it's a different kind of audience, different spending patterns, would pay 10x, 20x at times to get associated with it. So that was a very different play for about 2 years. When it comes to Network 18, here scale is our biggest advantage, and that really is an advantage in the market. So when we take the whole product together, if I would have been just an English and Hindi website, my value proposition to any advertiser would not be any different from a Hindustan Times, from a Scroll, from a Quint. Maybe they are doing younger content, maybe they are more digitally experimentative, if we may call. But in our case, the advantage is that if you come to us, if you want to monetize, you can monetize from India's first citizen to India's the bottom pyramid. Everything is available under one roof. under, synced experience under one single team. So that's how, it would be different. It also, is an advantage when we go to large partners, when we go to AdX or bidding partners or programmatic partners, they prefer to work with the likes of Network 18 or Times Internet because it's a one-stop shop. So building out vernacular was super necessary and, kind of, a go-to for us from the starting, especially when Network 18 kind of brought together the whole ETV universe and the advantage of TV came to us. So most people do not maybe see it that way, but Network 18 has a huge video, a leg up on video. We have 20 plus TV channels. So a lot of video content actually is already generated by the ecosystem. As product managers, we have to bring it together.
Yeah, no, because I remember I was there on the website, and the first thing that comes up is live TV will come up soon. Right? It's a very neat way of sort of leveraging that content house which you already have right now access to. Interesting. So Jitto, my next question is for you, right? And you mentioned something very interesting. You in your career you had an e-commerce pit stop, right? Now, as pretty much everybody, the India 1 market, as they call it, right, which is the classic tier 1 seke audience, people who go to Starbucks, people who are actually happy in the lockdown, almost, right? That's the audience that is now more or less tapped out for a bunch of these, older e-commerce businesses, so to say, right? And now everybody is looking at India 2 or India 3, or Bharat as they call it, right? The rural India and so on, right? You have seen both parts of the journey, right? With Network 18, obviously things that are at a different scale altogether, right? And in e-commerce from an execution point of view, right? What would be your lessons, right, or lessons which you would to apply if you were to set up an e-commerce shop today, and you would sort of cater to the tier 2 and tier 3 India?
Yeah. So another good question, I think. So the way we look at it right now, I think English users, or primarily the tier 1 audience, is saturated, and we are seeing very incremental growth there. And tier 2 and 3 overall for the entire ecosystem, I think that's already seen like a 3x, 4x kind of a growth. So in context of e-commerce, what I feel is important is today a lot of the standard traditional, the e-tailer platforms, they are somewhat limited in terms of their modus operandi in English language. And language, I think, is an essential barrier, because a lot of your checkout processes, your billing processes, your payment processes are still kind of in your old English formats. And that, to a Hindi audience, to a very vernacular audience, is kind of a kind of a deal breaker, and they kind of look at the offline mechanisms of transacting. So yes, over a period of time in the last year and a half, we have kind of seen Google evolve in terms of their payment methods. There is Amazon, which is expanded into Hindi as such. Paytm is now available in a lot of Indic languages. So there is adoption happening, but the entire ecosystem has to come in together. It is not just the retailers, it is also your payment mechanisms, it's your telecom operators, it's your smartphone manufacturers. Everybody has to come together and kind of take this ecosystem to a next level. There are interesting case studies where we are seeing that a lot of e-com adoption is happening in tier 2 and 3. But to augment and to, I would say, growth hack it to the next level, I think these methods are kind of very, very important and critical in their roadmaps. Somehow, I have seen very limited work happening there.
Right. Yeah. I remember there was this Amazon case study which came out, wherein they said something very unique and interesting, that users in tier 3 towns of country were confusing the search icon as we know it as a magnifying glass emoji as a tennis racket.
Correct.
And they said, we don't want to buy a tennis racket. I don't want this. Right. And ironically, Amazon's biggest strength, the 21 odd years of Amazon, the one thing that they have championed better than Google is product search and product recommendations. The journey starts from that click, And that is exactly what is confusing the user most, right? So, very unique, finer nuances of product development, right? Uh, how is it different in case of media? Like, do people consume it in a different manner, or do they, prefer a different layout? How are things there?
So when we were building this product for News 18 languages, I think one of the most important consideration was the platform that we were building it for. So for reference, we only had, I would say, a sizable audience on the News 18 English site, which has been fairly there for a long time. But when we were looking at intake and we were looking at competition studies and all, it was increasingly becoming clear that we need to focus on mobile, and that's where the audience is. So one of the smarter things that we did was to essentially adopt a progressive web app when we were doing our mobile strategy. And if I may say, all our, the Indic languages sites, when they were launched, they were essentially a progressive web app. So that has seen a lot of adoption in terms of, the whether it is, internet bandwidth, whether it is leveraging push notifications, whether it is about offline caching, driving performance, reliability, and those factors. That was very, very critical in our consideration when we were building that product out. In terms of UX, well, when we built it out, I think at that point in time we were just figuring out a kind of a template which kind of fits all. And yeah, so from a product standpoint, I think two critical things were, one, we moved to a progressive web app for efficiency. The other thing was basic nuances of making the share buttons more upfront, putting out text along with icons to make it more clear to the users. Uh, but I somehow, in the last, I would say about a year's time, or maybe in the last 6 months, what has kind of radicalized it is when you look at platforms like a TikTok, or you look at Hello and Share Chats of the world. I mean, you are seeing a plethora of audience, younger audience coming in, adopting those platforms. So somehow I think that education barrier is slowly bridging out, and people are getting acquainted with how and what they are supposed to do with maybe the traditional media sites or traditional players.
Okay, so I love that, I love the mention of TikTok, because, what is life without TikTok? So Sonakshi, coming back to you, uh, you you would have a very decent overlap, in terms of just audience access when it comes to TikTok, between you and TikTok. Right? TikTok globally has about 500 million users right now. Right? I'm sure in terms of number, it's not where News 18 is, but in terms of the monetization strategy which TikTok is taking, right? One, what's your take on that? Right? Second, uh, how do you look at them in terms of competition which has access to that audience, and in ways of monetization of that audience, right? What's your take there?
Okay. So TikTok is one platform that I personally have, strong opinions about, because I am a journalist by training. So I'm a content purist. We understand how content is generated, where publications have a role in the ecosystem, where celebrities and endorsements have a role system. So when I think about TikTok, it's a video version of Instagram for me. With more short form content, with more snackable content. ये snackable word काफी vogue में रहा था, snacking content बनाओ. So वो है. Now when I think about TikTok as a platform, highly successful, has made stars, and but their main source of revenue is endorsements. So that is something that a lot of media, publishers, like when we talk to our editors or when we talk to our business heads, कि TikTok monetize करना चाहिए. But the psyche of the whole platform is different. It's basis endorsements, getting your voice out. When we are a news publisher, we already have several pegs in the game to get our voice out. You have your TV channels, you're present on YouTube, you're present on a website. So for us, goal number one is always to get users back to my platform, because that's where I show my ads. So that's always mecca. You have to get people back. Even if you're making TikTok content, host it on your YouTube, host it on your Facebook, host it on your website. Now, why do we need to be present? It's just, there is no option of not being there. Because TikTok, in the case of News 18, which is spread across languages, the audience is there. So where that comes into picture is as a major branding tool. How Facebook was, how Instagram is. Frankly, Instagram is not a money spinner for a company like News 18, but it is a brand building tool. It is a way to connect with your audience because they are commenting, they are typing, they are asking questions. It makes for a great tool for our anchors to go and connect with the audience directly. Anchors as in TV anchors, known
Right.
faces. It's a
Right.
human to human medium that
Mm-hmm.
works wonders. And it also worked wonders when Facebook Live was introduced the
Right.
first time.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
used,
Yeah.
even it's used today. Where TikTok would come for us in the monetization piece, frankly, it will be the other way around, where we would approach a TikTok to get their word out. They face a lot of problem in the space of branding. Like TikTok is dealing with this image ki they are frivolous content only, so they do reach out to publishers where we make serious content, good content. And that's the scene you must have seen across the web. Why is Facebook paying media publishers so much? Why is Instagram running after media publishers? Because see, nobody can deny the fact that we generate the content, we
Yeah.
can verify content. So it's
Yeah.
a very different relationship. I would not run after generating money from it right now, where it would sit in a pitch. For example, if my sales team goes in the market and says that for X amount of money, this is the share of voice we'll give, our TikTok audience will also be part of it because that is at least 1x amplification. So you price it accordingly. अगर आपको ये audience भी चाहिए, ये audience भी चाहिए platform
Right.
wise, that's where
Right.
it fits in the actual the ROs, the sales ROs that we get.
Nice. So I great answer. Right, and I'll just sort of go one level deeper there. So you said there is a TikTok audience, and then there was a Facebook audience, and there was an Insta Live audience. Right. One, who are the heroes in this case? Is it the anchors or the news editors? Just like the way we have seen it in the FM industry, where the RJ is the hero of that of that Facebook fan page, right? And the brand is just leveraged there. So RJ Ronak from 103 point from 93.5 mm, right? So are you also making your heroes as editors and anchors?
So you cannot not do that. So
Right.
if you remember, like any TV channel, be it Network 18, Times, or anybody, whenever you remember their promo, whatever promos they air, it's always for the shows. Because just saying that, okay, come watch Network 18 channels, we are very good, we are great journalists, that's not a
Right.
great message.
Yeah.
That's not a great message. You have to exactly break down your content कि if you like this ये भी अब मिलेगा, if you like that we'll serve this also. So for TV, because we are a TV led company altogether, our major branding, our major presence is our channels. So most of our advertising branding material does center around the faces, the journalist. uh, Beyond that, we did have a digital audience to begin with. News 18, which was CNN IBN, and News 18 India, which was Khabar IBN 7, had a digital audience from the beginning, but that I would classify as the loyal, brand lovers who also came for the writing. In the writing also, a lot of mileage would go into pieces written by those esteemed journalists who would be seen on TV or maybe were reporting from
Yeah.
somewhere. That
Yeah.
really gets good mileage. The digital editors come into picture in building the online brand. For example, any news that is covering any social trend or something, those writers build their own equity much slower than if you see and you compare with TV.
Right.
So how does it all boil down for us? For example, if I'm launching an app today and I want to promote video content, I'm going to gather all my show tiles from the TV channel, package it, and that's the first hook I'll use, and then maybe create branding material after that, as a long tail,
Got it.
because that works. That gets us
Interesting.
eyeballs. Yeah.
Right. Now, Sudipto, coming back to you, and this is a question which sort of deals with both monetization and also product building as well, right? So you said there is a English tax that brands have been bearing. simply, a lot of people have just tried to translate their apps into a Hindi or a Kannada or a Marathi or some of these languages. But we know for a fact that just pure plain Google translation doesn't cut it. It needs more than that, very sure, right? How does that impact your product development from a monetization point of view? Because at some point in time, right, somebody has to pay, right? Somebody sort of sustain that development effort, right? Uh, what's the what's the what are the implications, or what are the kind of requests that Sonakshi comes to you with? That, hey, I'm trying to sort of monetize this audience, right? Why don't you help me with this?
So one of the fundamental things that we are now seeing, and which is different from the last couple of years. So typically, any news publisher has been getting campaigns around CPM deliveries and all. Now, with the volume and the inventory growing at scale, with the audiences kind of exploding on the platforms, CPMs are under pressure. So it's basically inversely proportional, right? So volume, larger volumes, your the demand is kind of there. The supply goes up, and when the demand is kind of shrinking, so the CPMs are under pressure. Uh, Interestingly, what we are now seeing is basically audience targeting now coming in. So advertisers, when they are coming to us, they are increasingly asking for targeting on affinity categories, to a specific segment, to a specific gender, class, and all. So that's, I think, what is fundamentally shifting to in case of news publishers. Remember, we are not we are a news publisher which is like a free open media. People don't log into our platforms, so we don't get a lot of personal data right now on our platforms. So and that's what is challenging for us as well. So today, I mean, most of the publishers have their own DMP platforms which they are kind of using to target audiences and all. When I talk about product development, essentially, so DMP is a critical path for targeting audiences any which way. Uh, if I look at how the monetization amalgamates with a product, say Kannada versus Punjabi, or for that matter, I think what I would look at probably is what format works well there. And we are also seeing some requests for branded content. So every advertiser comes in with a specific need of how the brand wants their content piece to show up. It's no longer just simple plain vanilla display ads. It's more integrated, and that's where the publisher value is there. Right? So we generate content. So as from a brand perspective, the value that we bring to the table is essentially that you can create those experiences for them in terms of content deliveries, in terms of formats of content, snackier formats, whether it is video-led format, whether it is something like a nice innovation in terms of display advertisements that we could run. So these are the different things and nuances that we are kind of dealing with. Yeah.
All right. So that was your version of the answer. Now we'll hear Sonakshi's version. Right. Sonakshi, I also have a question that has come in from Yaras, and and so I think we'll take the question first. There exists, India for some reason is, as a country, shows up as number 2 or number 3 for a lot of publishers out there on the internet. As the highest source of traffic, India just shows up, right? Be it Twitter, be it Quora, right? Obviously Google, right? Uh, as a country, we love consuming content. Let's just sort of just rest the argument there, and because of which, lot of publishers in the world get this amazing amount of traffic from India, and they have no clue what to do with it, because they're like, we have to serve them, right? There are a bunch of them who are, who go to the extreme end of, putting a firewall there and saying, we do not serve Indian audience. Sure, fair enough, right? And but then again, there's some, who say, hey, we want to sort of, serve them because it's content, it's a reader, it doesn't matter who they're coming from. But end of the day, somebody has to pay the bills, right? So what's your advice to somebody sitting in Europe right now, which is one of our customers on the call, as to how to monetize this Indian traffic? And his specific question is, they currently use Google AdSense, and guess what? That doesn't cover the expenses for them. So yes,
Okay.
your 2 cents.
So in our case, our ground reality is completely different. Like we just, obviously we are an Indian publisher, so the long tail of global audience is kind of very low for us. So that's my only frame of reference to answer this question. How do I deal with the non-Indian audience, which is very small for me? What is that audience? That is typically the Indian diaspora outside, or due to good SEO, good SCM, some of my news pieces just figured in somebody's search. Since most Indian advertisers who are directly dealing with our sales teams do not want that audience because there is no use case, they are selling their own products in India. For any non-Indian audience, programmatic is our one-stop solution. And programmatic is a very generic word. It consists of multiple partners. So for example, if I'm trying to monetize my connected TV app in Australia, UK, Europe, I would actually have to go through at least 4 to 5 vendors to kind of get their demand supply information, get an agreement on what kind of CPMs can be worked on, kind of negotiate on what volume I'll send, what volume they will kind of give us as guarantee through the year. And these conversations are possible because we are networking. So even with the long tail, when I aggregate all 13 websites, it's a decent conversation to have. Then our programmatic team also kind of tries to get the maximum out of all sorts of AdX bidding. So see, Google for sure cannot fill all your unfilled inventory when it comes to your non-core audience. Even we have tried that. That does not work. Google will say that they send better ads. They will tell you that they'll give you better CPMs or better volumes. Unfortunately, news audience is very fickle. If today a story is trending right now, that trend is active for just 1 hour. If I'm not able to monetize that, it's gone. It's that whole opportunity is gone. So we kind of scourge the market. We try to find the best programmatic partners and we divide them. Some programmatic partners are very good with in-article ads. Some programmatic partners are very good with video inventory. Some programmatic partners, can even now, it has even kind of evolved to content and native content generation. How to manage, that kind of pipeline where you bring all your social media assets together. And if somebody, is interested in kind of getting the word out at a price, a promo content here, there. Then there is also, we have special relationships with e-commerce companies like Amazon, where we work with them to produce content. Because that's my, USP. Network 18 or any media company's USP is generating content. We can generate good quality content right from a phone review to a review of a vacuum cleaner. It's different when editors and experts do it. So we try to leverage that part. What if I'm trying to get an e-commerce partner on board to advertise with me, and I know for a fact that every day 1 lakh people log into News 18 from UK. So I can always, kind of create a special landing page so that it's very easy for them to reach that page, get a special deal, restrict our code serving or, add tags to that audience. DFP has so many tools to, to tweak your targeting and get, the right price for all this programmatically or automatically bought audience. And what I have seen from my team, the team that actually works these bids, who fine-tunes bids, negotiates with these partners, it's every day. That's the kind of time, effort, and experiments. See, CPM is a generic metric. It keeps going up and down. It needs to be optimized. It's, after all, an algorithm. So you need to be one step ahead of the algorithm to make sure that your dashboard is, being optimized to the fullest. You cannot switch on the tap and then go and sleep. That does not work when your long tail audience is at stake.
Right. The race.
Yeah, and a last, not last, but a smaller part is syndication. So, for example, there's a Japanese aggregator who would love to have Indian content. That's where big brands, because a brand like News 18 will already be known to that aggregator. So we have a leg in the door to do those syndication deals. And we are very, very clear about syndication, that no more free content. Those days are gone. let's have, a proper formal agreement in place with the price agreed upon, and any and every content required with whatever customizations will be served. That's why our bouquet of syndication platforms is massive. From UC to, a Geo set-top box to, a Flipboard, which is a very, tier one kind of app, but we are there. We have to be there. And then, work with those to generate money. It's a step-by-step process.
Perfect. Amazing. I love, the sort of depth you guys have gone to sort of monetize the assets you have built over time. Now, now, so both you and Sudipto use two very interesting terms, right? You use the word audience, right, while you're answering about TikTok. And Sudipto spoke about how, as a media site, there is no concept of login per se, right? So we sort of just pretty much stop ourselves from an anonymous visitor to somebody who is becoming a part of a larger audience, right? Do you think that this is probably a good time for the job description of a chief audience officer to sort of emerge right between the two of you as the head of products and the head of monetization? Do you think there is a need of a new job description, new job role called as the head of audience, who sort of helps, and again, this is not in context of Network 18, but in general, given the media ecosystem, right? And that how poorly have, how for the longest time, publishers have just been like pipes. As I said, the free content syndication deals used to happen for the longest time. Do you think that is now becoming a necessity in the ecosystem of building audiences and actually owning them as well, and not sort of relying on a Facebook or a TikTok or an Insta or some other platform which will pop up in 6 months from now? So actually, what's your take?
So it's a difficult task in news. That's for sure. Owning your own audience is a dream. Our sister property, Money Control, does have a leg up in that game because of the nature of content. There are mutual funds, special data. People are ready to pay. In the case of news, however, if we see models, Scroll, or you see the Ken in the Indian market, you see ET Prime, it's difficult. So owning through the subscription or paywall model requires a lot of work. However, on the other end, where I can own a non-logged in audience, which only shows as X million DAUs on my GA, that frankly comes for us through different mediums. Like obviously, we do work with iZooto. That's the notification bit that works beautifully for us on the web, with enough and more customizations available, enough and more expansion available, where despite having no logged in information, but at least engineering cookies the right way, a lot of stuff can be done. Then there is chasing trends. For example, if you go even do a regular Google search on the whole internet trend, there is always top 5 topics. If you leave news aside, like for the news industry, that has kind of parenting, go maybe 2015 or 2014. This is the last 4-5 years, and that language barrier. Parents are of all language, health in all languages, lifestyle all languages. So that's where if we kind of work towards a content strategy, that content coming from trusted sources has a very high probability to build an owned audience compared to just throwing news trends. Because news, if they're not able to access on my platform, if I'm late by even 5 minutes, they'll go to Times, they'll go to HT. But good quality life, I call it life information for my own personal reference, things that make your life better. That has no language barrier, no religion, nothing. So that's something, even as an organization, we're seeing a lot of adoption, especially on vernacular. As Sudipto mentioned, the kind of audience consumed in vernacular is actually, beyond news. That's the larger chunk. So one has to, not let go of it and make sure that, you get your people back. Outside of the website, obviously YouTube's, Facebook's, Twitter's, due to the way they are designed, they allow for subscribes, they allow for follow, they allow for likes. So I see it in my head as a pseudo-owned audience. At least I have that like, at least I have that subscribe. At least when I'll do a live video, it'll go directly to somebody's app on the phone. Though I may not be able to track them, but do we need to? We don't need to, frankly. So that's, it's a very mesh kind of owned audience piece for us. I wouldn't say we are very happy with where we are. There's miles to go, but this is what it is right now.
Interesting. Amazing. Very insightful answers, Sakshi. Thanks for that. So coming back to you, I'll just sort of add one more line to that question. Uh, you deal with a very different audience. Uh, the way they live, the way they spend money, the way they consume content, the way they spend their day is very, very different, right? Uh, do you believe at do you believe there's a scope of a subscription offering, given the fact that payment or micropayments are now a reality in this country, and we, by the way, are miles ahead as compared to any other economy in the world when it comes to micropayments, right? Do you think uh, a platform like Network 18, right, would envision monetizing audience or their users uh, by using, what we will call today as, unconventional means like subscription? Do you think there's a scope or possibility of that in the mass media landscape? What's your take there?
So I think from a subscription standpoint, I think I'll just reiterate what Sonakshi was mentioning. So money control is another network property. Because of its nature, we also have a subscription product there, which is called Money Control Pro. The recent news is that we have kind of hit 2 lakh paid subscribers there. Yeah, and that's like a very commendable feat. When it comes to news, I think what I want to also mention is there is very little loyalty which is kind of being shown by the audiences. Uh, Evolving direct traffic on your platforms from a continuous sticky point of view, month over month and years over years, takes time. You have to also understand that as News 18, the entire Indic languages business is just about 2.5 years old. And despite that, we are in amongst the top 3 publishers in most of the markets. Bangla is like we are number one. We are also a number two, very close to the number one player in Maharashtra, Marathi. Telugu, we have been at number one for some time. So it is a challenging environment nonetheless. When it comes to subscription products, I think a lot of it also rides on your editorial and journalism metal that you have to come up with. It is, I think, large opinion pieces could be one of the strength areas that people are doing in the market. What do you stand for is essentially what I'm trying to ask ourselves as a media group. Why will people come and subscribe to you? Is it because of your formats? Is it because of the volume on and the spread of news that you kind of deliver, or is it basically because of the brand? Just because they have exposure to, through a TV channel. I like following CNN News 18. So, so a natural progression of, following it on the web as well. Will I pay just for breaking news and trending news? I don't see that happening. It has to be augmented with a lot of new formats. It has to be augmented with a lot of original content, I would say, which is beyond your breaking and trending content. More importantly, in the tier 2, tier 3 markets, I think there is a paradigm shift and a huge consumption around the non-news category, which is life, spirituality, health, uh, all the DIY segments. So we are seeing a lot of shift there. But as a news publisher, I think it is too early to kind of say that whether we will go the subscription route typically on those fronts. So as a product, I think it's not yet come together in terms of bringing content and the product pieces together to take it into a market and say that, hey, we are kind of ready with subscriptions. We are not like I mean, News 18 cannot be compared with Economic Times, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different product altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think it's early, but yeah, possibly under consideration.
Awesome. Superb conversation, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Before I let go of you guys, I have one question for you, and this is something which we've made like a tradition on the office hours, right? I know the two of you are extremely busy individuals, professionals, but just curious. What are you reading? What are you watching? What are you listening? What's on your Netflix list? What's on the Kindle? What's on your podcast list? Right. Again, because you're in media, you cannot tell me that you don't consume news. So yes,
No,
there
no.
has to be something on those three lists. Right. Sonakshi, what are you reading, watching, or listening? Tell us.
So I watched Into the Night yesterday itself.
Uh-huh.
It's this. I think it's a French series about these people trying to run away from the sun because as soon as the sunlight comes, people die.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So I saw it on Akshat Pathak's Instagram recommendation. So that's what I watched.
Right.
Apart from that, anything and everything that comes on Amazon Prime, Hotstar. I'm a Disney kid. I grew up with Disney. I was the happiest when Disney Plus launched. I can't tell you. It's not. I won't even be embarrassed to say that I was watching Tom and Jerry right in the morning today. So I love it. I love it.
Wait, Disney has Tom and Jerry?
No, I watched it on YouTube. Unfortunately, they've not got it all there. But
If
all
they
the
have
shows,
Tailspin, I would love Tailspin. Just
yeah.
yeah,
So DuckTales, Tailspin, everything. So I'm loving
yeah.
that. Panchayat was very good.
Interesting. Okay.
I really like because I'm from I'm UP Bihar. I'm a Bihari myself, so I get that. So I love watching that content. On the
Awesome.
reading side, unfortunately, I've moved to the dark side, and I just got a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, the English version.
Uh-huh.
My mom says that young people should not read it because it's supposed to be read when you're like really old. But I think this whole situation, being confined to your homes and stuff like that, it just really got me into that, mood to kind of read it. Right before that, I was reading a very old, I don't know whether many people will be aware of, there was a journalist called Kuldeep Nair. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he's a pre-partition born
Okay.
person, and so he had like an autobiography kinds, very well written. I read that, and
Okay.
I don't read fiction, so I just have stuff like this on my Kindle. So that's where
Got it.
I'm at. Spotify, we are not opening these days because there's no commute and there are no new releases.
Yeah.
There's some
Yeah.
stupid Justin Bieber song. That's about it. Nothing new coming in.
Yeah.
I do listen to Billie Eilish. I like her
Okay.
music. She did release something new very recently. So that's my gamut of audio, video, text right now.
Sripto, the rumor says that you don't sleep. Right?
He does
The rumor
not.
says that you don't sleep. And I'm hella sure you're consuming a whole lot of content as you go along, operating like like the ultimate machine. So tell us what's on the list.
So essentially, I have a 10-month-old baby at home. So I have my own set of Tom and Jerry's and tailspins happening here. uh, so beyond that, I think whatever limited hours I get, there is some bit of Hindi series and all that I catch up on Amazon Prime. There is some bit of Scorpion is the latest series, which it might not be latest in terms of its day of release. I'm just catching up on certain cool stuff that excites me. Principally, I am more of a science fiction guy. I loved watching over and over Avengers, the Iron Man kinds. So
Right.
yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, my TV viewing is very, very limited. At max, when I'm having dinner, I kind of catch up on a maybe in that entire 24-hour cycle, I just get about 2 hours to kind of catch up on television. So that's my limited window to it. Spend about 2 hours with my baby. She's like growing up and is a lot of pain. Yeah. And uske baad, whatever Sonakshi said is right. I think we have long working hours ever since we moved into this COVID phase.
Yeah.
Moved coordinating across functions is like humongous, because given the scale at which we are, uh, it is like very, very challenging right now.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really appreciate, both of you, making the time for this conversation. Really insightful. Lot of things that I personally had very little knowledge about. Lovely conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. Right.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Chaliye. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What's the
Stay safe.